next, I want to, before I introduce Bryce and Bryant, they're part of our client treasury services team, and they do basically three things. They save you money, they make you money, and they protect your money. So with that, I'm going to introduce Bryce True, who leads our client treasury services team. Bryce?
Thanks, Greg, for that insurmountable expectation you set on everybody of us. So we'll do our best to live up to that. So for those I haven't met, my name is Bryce True. I have been with the bank for a little over 7 years. Been affiliated for obviously my whole God-given life, and I've loved every minute of it. And we're really excited to be here. Again, thank you for braving the cold and coming out today. Could have been a better day, but we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. I'm also really going to try to inject some humor into this because I'm super nervous, and so if someone just wants to throw a Jolly Rancher at me, that would really help me slow down. I wouldn't be offended at all.
We're all on your side.
Thanks, I appreciate that. That helps. So the first real bit of house cleaning. This is our disclaimer. So Bryant and I, we're not really certified for a whole lot. We're not CPAs. We're not tax attorneys. We're not attorneys. They probably could commit us if someone would actually take mercy on us, but it hasn't happened yet. So we're here to talk, and we're here to show you what we think are 3 really important things that will help your business be more successful. What we're going over today, we're going to cover a couple different things. One, evaluating your business, why it's important, goal setting, and how not setting a goal is really detrimental to your success. The 3 numbers that we think will help you attain those goals and increase the value that you have in your business, the ways that we can help, and then obviously we're going to address questions and answers. Additionally, at the end, there's going to be a question and answer section, an anonymous survey, and then a little form, so if there's a topic that we cover today that you want more information about, please let us know. We'd love to follow up and answer anything that we were too vague on or something that you just want more information on. Love to sit down and meet with you and figure out what makes the most sense. So why evaluating your business is important and necessary? Well, when you evaluate your business on a regular basis, you can start to identify the areas of your business that are weaker or areas that might be an issue that develop into a problem. But if you're evaluating it, you see it coming. Okay? You might not necessarily know what you don't know about your business if you're not taking time to look at it, right? You can know the health of your business by knowing where you're at. If you're constantly in the red or if you don't have cash to fund your operations, but you're not taking the time to understand why, there could be some leaks that you can easily plug up and be the low-hanging fruit. It also helps you plan your strategies. What are your goals? But what's holding you back from accomplishing that? Well, the most obvious is time. How many people in here have seen corporate structures where you have a CEO, a COO, and a CFO? Yeah, some have. Thanks. Thank you. For most, I would imagine that you wear all of those hats as one person. Right? That's your job. That's why you're here. You're trying to figure out how to do all 3 of those positions better. What that means is when you're trying to evaluate your business, you're short on time. You're spending all of your time actually running your business, trying to make it more profitable and not taking time to step back and work on it. Additionally, when you're stepping away to work on the business, there's a cost to that. You're trying to evaluate the overall picture, and that might mean you're shortchanging your revenues in the short term in order to figure out where you can actually grow long term. If you've never done it before, you might not know what to look at and how to truly evaluate your business in a holistic view and as objectively as possible. If you've never done it before, how do you start? Who do you talk to help you evaluate your business? So when you're evaluating your business, one of the other aspects that you really want to look at are your goals. What are your goals? I've been told many, many times that not having a plan is planning to fail. Having failed once or twice in my life, I can easily relate to that sentence. So defining your goals is probably one of the most critical aspects to this whole conversation. If you don't know where you're trying to get to, you're not going to get there. That's the first question that I have for you. What are your goals? Who in here wants to make more money? Right? Every hand needs to go up. Everybody wants more money, right? But is it to create a job? Are you trying to create succession planning? Are you trying to have something for the next generation? What are those opportunities and what are those targets that you're trying to reach? So in a world full of metrics, there are 3 that will rise to the top. You can click it.
Thank you. Okay, so as Bryce said, there's 3 metrics that we want to talk about, but there's a lot of numbers out there that you can use to evaluate your business. So we picked 3 that we feel like would be effective for you to be able to analyze your business and align your strategies to the goals that you're going to create. So we're going to talk about profit margin, net equity, and operating cash flow. So we're going to start by talking about profit margin, how to evaluate it, what is it, and why it's important. So profit margin is simply your net income over your total sales or revenues. And it's a measure of your company's profitability. Why do you care? If you're profitable, why do you want to take the time to do this? Well, one of the things that profit margin tells you is for every dollar of sales, what's going to end up is actual profit for your business. And that can be really useful when you're planning future decisions. Do you want to expand your business? Do you want to hire someone else? Do you have the room in your dollars in that expenses to actually hire that? Do you have enough money to be able to hire someone? It can also, sorry about that. It can also be the canary in the coal mine for your company's efficiencies. So generally speaking, a company that is running more efficiently is going to have a higher profit margin. But if you're tracking that and your profit margin starts to decline, it can indicate trends that are costly to your business, time or money wasted, that just looking at the gross numbers might not otherwise identify. So if you were fortunate enough to have the time to attend our last Lunch and Learn that was presented by our lending department, you were introduced to Amy's Wine House. So we wanted to revisit Amy's Wine House to illustrate the 3 points that the 3 numbers that we're gonna look at right now. So Amy is like I'm sure a lot of people in here, is owner-operator. She's the manager and the owner of her business. It was established in 2009. She's got 2 employees and about $250,000 to $300,000 in sales. As Bryce talked about earlier, Amy has also identified some goals that she wants to set for herself. So Amy wants to increase her net income to $2,500 a month and use that net income to increase her retained earnings. So looking at Amy's income statement, and I apologize if it's a little bit hard to read, but you can also reference your deck, but her total sales have increased month over month. And so that's a positive trend that Amy's really excited about. If you look in June to July, her sales actually increased really significantly because Amy had a wedding that she hosted in July and another one in August, which led to a big jump in sales. So she's very excited about those numbers. Jumping down to the expenses section, Amy's trying to focus on the numbers that she can control on a monthly basis to affect her bottom line. Her rent and her insurance, those are essentially fixed costs that she can't renegotiate on a monthly basis. But she can look at these other expenses, and you can see right here, it jumped considerably from $656 to over $1,400. And so we're going to talk about why those other expenses jumped so significantly, but then also her wages increased. And the reason between the June-July wage increases, as Amy would say, she was long overdue for a raise, so she paid herself more money, but then also as those sales increased, she had to hire someone else. But even then, after taking all the expenses out of her sales, she's positive. She's got net income every month. So just looking at these gross numbers, Amy's feeling really good. She's moving toward her goal of $2,500. So just pausing for a second, which month do you guys all think, if we're looking at Amy's business, is her best month? If we're telling Amy, if we're analyzing the business, do you think it's May or June? Which is the best month? Just a show of hands, May or June, together, like one of those 2 months, May, June, okay? Who thinks July is her best month? If you raise your hand, you're out of here. I'm gonna kick you out. Who thinks August is the best month? Okay, all right. So looking at a graphical representation, that makes sense, right? Her sales were the highest in August. Her net income was the highest in August. But if we put the profit margin across the bottom to compare what's the profit margin across that same trend line, the one thing that I really want to point out to illustrate why profit margin is important is, her July profit margin was down, and that makes sense because she had that increase in her other expenses. But if we kind of throw July out of here, her profit margin's trending down, right? It went from 4.2 to 3.9 to 3.7, even as her sales grew every month. And so this is something that can actually afflict a lot of small businesses, especially if you're not paying attention to the profit margin. You're thinking, I'm growing, my net income is growing. What is wrong with that? Everything is trending the right way just by looking at these raw numbers. But she can ultimately end up working harder for less money. And so at the end of the day, if she doesn't pay attention to this number, when it's all said and done 3-6 months down the road, she might be making just the same amount of net income and working twice as hard. So that's why a profit margin can actually be a really important number to pay attention to. So what can Amy do about it? What can she do to align her goals of maximizing her profits as she grows? Well, she can set a floor to her profit margin and track it. So in Amy's case, if she sets a floor of, say, 3.5%, she's willing to have some fluctuations in her profit margin, but if her sales go up to, say, $40,000 and her profit margin continues to decline, as the owner of that business, or as the manager, she should take stock. She should stop and say, should I continue growing? Or do I need to slow down? Or maybe I need to increase the price of my goods sold to keep that in line, to keep my profit margin high. So these are some of the ways you want to use your profit margin. But if she's not paying attention to this, she might just be working harder for less money. One other consideration that, having worked for small businesses before, I really want to illustrate is, how are you paying yourself in the profit margin? Are you paying yourself as an employee, or are you paying yourself out of your profits? And the reason that can become important is, as Bryce talked about before, with succession planning, if you're paying yourself out of your profits and you want to sell your business to someone who doesn't want to run your business, they're just buying it as an investment, your business can actually be worth less if you're paying yourself out of your profits, not as an employee. So that's just another consideration to think about with regard to profit margin. So before I move on, this is like, it just kind of builds on itself, so I'm going to pause for a second. But is there any questions on profit margin, net income, or anything like that? Going once, going twice? Okay.
Sold.
So ultimately speaking, Amy's able to pay herself. She can pay her vendors, she can pay her rent. So why does she really care how much profit she has? I mean, aside from profit's good and we want to make profit. But the reason it's important is because profit is going to lead to her net equity goals. The more profit she has, the more she's going to build equity into her company. So we were talking about the income statement, profit margin, now we're shifting over to net equity. So what is net equity when we say that? It's really your net worth. What do you have in the business? And it's almost an easy way to think about it is, what are your net assets? If you know your business is worth $250,000, but you owe $200,000, your net equity is the difference between those two. Again, why do you care? Why do you want to track it? As you can grow your net equity, you can increase the security and flexibility in your business and ultimately take advantage of opportunities that you can use that equity, that capital, to invest to earn more of a return, which kind of creates a positive cycle, right? As your business grows, then you can invest and earn more of a return and grow it. When you get to that point, come talk to us, because that's what we like to help people do. The other thing is business valuation. If you know what these numbers are, then you can know what the book value of your business is, and that can help you when you're starting to do the succession planning. So I talked about profit margin in the previous couple of slides, and I really like to think of the profit margin as kind of the manager's ratio to think about. Amy's the owner and operator, right? So she's, like Bryce said, she's wearing two hats. She's the manager, but she also owns it. But if she kind of draws a line and says, okay, I'm going to think about the profit margin as my manager hat. It's going to affect the decisions I make on a daily basis to the business. The return on equity is her owner's margin. If she didn't work there, if she just paid someone else to do what she does, is she getting a good return on her investment? So it's really, think of your business as it's your investment if it's your retirement. For a lot of people, your business is your retirement. And so your return on equities, what's the income your equity is returning for you? So a good broad target is 15 to 20%, and that's going to be industry specific. It could vary wildly amongst everybody in the room, but you want it to be positive. If it's below 10, if it's below 5, if it's zero, then you have $100,000 in your business. You could be making more money if it was invested in something else. That's kind of the whole point on why you want to look at your return on equity. And then the debt to equity is just how much is your business leveraged. And there's even less of a trend or a target that we wanted to say, but generally it should be trending down. If you have debt, you want to be paying on that debt and lowering the debt to your equity. So looking at Amy's balance sheet, I'll keep these sections short because, as my wife will tell you, looking at numbers is generally boring unless you do what we do. So jumping down to the, I'm gonna bring that back and actually see if anybody caught that really fast. But so retained earnings, how do you grow retained earnings? That's not a banker in the room. What number increases your retained earnings? And if you're a banker, you can't answer. Anybody? I'll give you $5 if you can answer. Okay, perfect, awesome. You're gonna learn one thing today. Your net income. Your net income grows your retained earnings. So her retained earnings was $4,200 at the end of May. She had a net income of $850 in June. So her retained earnings increased by that to $5,100 at the end of June. So if your business is profitable and you have net income at the end of each month or at the end of each year, that increases your equity in that business, okay? Oops, I took out those two pieces. The other thing that I want to pay attention to, or that we would want to pay attention to for it helping Amy here, is even though her retained earnings are growing, so 42, 51, 58, 60, 69, almost $7,000 in retained earnings because she has positive net income every month, her cash up here is not increasing every month. It increased significantly between May and June, but then it's slowly trending down. So the other thing is retained earnings aren't cash, right? But looking at Amy's equity ratios, so as an owner, she's looking at this wearing her owner hat right now, are they positive? Are they good? And generally speaking, yeah, they're really good. 24%, 20%. It was down in July, but that made sense because that was her low net income month. But generally speaking, Amy's very happy with her return on equity numbers. And her debt to equity numbers are also trending positively. She's paying down that debt and she's not increasing her debt right now because that's not necessarily her plan. But thinking about her debt and aligning her ratios to what her goals are, remember, Amy's goal is to get to $50,000 net equity. It's not necessarily to increase her business or grow her business at this point in time. But if it was, she might want to increase her leverage. And the reason is because if she takes out, say, $50,000 from a very awesome and forthright community bank that puts together lunch and learns to teach people, and she borrows some money, and she grows her business, and her net income increases because, say, she opens up another shop, then her net income, that number over the equity, is greater, right? It's going to go from, say, 1,000 to 2,000. So she's increasing your net income, but she's doing it with, I'm going to say our money, even though Bob probably doesn't like it if I say that. So she's going to increase her return. But it does increase a little bit of risk, right? Because now she has to pay the bank, and if she gets short on cash, that's going to be difficult to do. On the other hand, if she's trying to clean up her balance sheet, thinking about, say, selling the business at the end, she might want to make sure she's paying down her debt so the balance sheet looks cleaner for a future buyer. And the decision where she's going to want to be on that is going to be where she's at in her business cycle. Is she starting up? Is she going to try and scale up and buy another shop, or is she planning to retire? Things like that. Those are the considerations you want to think about when you're looking at that. Some other additional, just two other considerations when you're looking at that we wanted to discuss with the net equity is, again, I touched on it earlier, is the book value method of valuing your business. It's what are your assets minus your liabilities is your equity. That's, in short, the book value of your business. So if you're selling your business, that's one approach you could do to take a look at what your business is worth. The other one would be an income approach, which you'd say, what's my net income times a multiple to get to the value of your business. The income approach generally is a little bit more optimistic, and the book value is usually a little bit more conservative. Most businesses are going to take a combination of these two, or a lot of times you'll be some spread between the two to arrive at what your number is. But I would be remiss, as Bryce said, we're not attorneys, and we're not valuation experts, and unless you are, if you're at this point, you should seek the counsel of someone to actually professionally value your business. So, any questions? I'm stopping again. No one's gonna have any questions, I realize that, but I'm stopping just to stop for a second. Okay. So she's positive net income, right? Her equity is growing, so she's working toward her goals. So why do we really care about the cash flow? Because even though Amy has positive cash earnings don't necessarily create cash for her business, but cash creates earnings. And I'm sure all the business owners would just come up here and be like, you're a banker, you don't know anything about this. I'm running my business, I know about cash. Cash is what you have in the account, right? She can be increasing her earnings, but if it's through accounts receivable, then she can't collect from her customers, then she can't pay her bills, she can't pay her employees, and so she's gonna be in a cash crunch. So when we're talking about operating cash flow, what are we really talking about? Cash that you're getting paid from sales, not just sales, but cash from sales, minus the cash you're paid for operating expenses. This one's easier because people care about cash, so I don't need to say why is this important, because everybody, I think, knows it's important. But this, I think, is a really powerful number, is 82% of businesses that fail, they do so because they have a lack of adequate cash flow. And so really, the next handful of slides and what I want to talk about with the rest of the cash flow piece of it, it's looking forward. It's easy because, as Bryce said, you don't have time to look at your business and put out fires and say, okay, I am profitable. I'll back up for a second. My business is profitable, but if you're not looking at your cash position, you can ultimately run into a position where you don't have cash, you can't pay your employees, or you're hamstrung on decisions you want to make. But you wait until you have a cash crunch to make a decision. And so if you start looking forward, then you can hopefully avoid that I'm not going to say inadequacy, but I'll say cash inadequacy. So what do you do to look at that? You look at the statement of cash flows. And the statement of cash flows is probably the least utilized financial that most businesses look at, but it's not that complicated if you look at it under two kind of functions. There's sources of cash and uses of cash. And I think everybody that is in business, this makes pretty good sense. If you sell your inventory, that's going to increase your cash. So that's a source of cash. If you have receivables that you collect on, it's a source of cash. Your cash position increases. That makes sense. On the other side of the coin, if you purchase inventory, decreases the cash you have on hand. That makes sense, right? So looking at Amy's statement of cash flows, this is the way your statement of cash flows is presented on most accounting software. And so this is why I presented it in this fashion. If you have QuickBooks and this is you use QuickBooks and you generate your statement of cash flows, this is exactly how it'll look. Your net income will show up at the very top, and then you have cash provided from operations. Then you also have cash provided from investing activities and financing activities. So Amy has a note that is a negative drain on her cash. Her monthly payment is going to come out of this financing activity. But paying attention to operating activities, in May, that $970 decrease in her cash position was because she had sales of $970 that were on accounts receivable that those people didn't pay in that month. So on her balance sheet, her accounts receivable increased by $970. That was a use of cash. That's a negative effect to Amy's cash position. She also bought $3,900 worth of inventory. That was a use of cash. So on her balance sheet, her inventory went up by $3,900, but she paid for that inventory, so it took cash out of here. And then on the payable side, she did not pay $2,700 of the bills that were due, her accounts payable. So her accounts payable also increased on her balance sheet, but that offset these two negative numbers. But at the end of the day, she still lost $1,300 in cash, even though she was profitable. And after she paid her note, she had $2,000 negative in May. So she started May with $10,000, and she ended May with about $8,000 in cash. And this will be kind of pointless because you're like, yeah, I know, but she was profitable. So she's not looking at this. She's profitable every month, and 3 out of these 4 months, she's losing cash. So she's not paying attention to this number. Amy, who's probably feeling really good up until I did this slide, she's reaching her goals, right? She's getting closer to that 2,500, that 50,000 net equity, but she's slowly dwindling down her cash. And if she doesn't have enough cash in the bank, she's growing at the expense of that cash. So what can Amy do? What can she do to affect this negative cash flow? Cash flow management. Cash flow management is really about looking forward instead of waiting. It's about being proactive instead of reactive. So the first thing that I would recommend every business owner or everybody that is on a nonprofit to advise the manager of your nonprofit or if you have any influence at all, is to prepare cash flow projections. So take that same statement of cash flows, and instead of looking at it up into what happened today, look forward. Amy probably knows what's going to happen in October, September, December, so she can start to project that forward. She knows what her rent's going to be. She knows what her salaries and wages are going to be. She just has to kind of assume and guess what her income's going to be, but she probably has a decent idea of what those seasonal months look like anyway. The other thing she can do looking forward is she can review her credit policies and the customers that pay her on accounts, their credit history of her customers. So if her biggest client is, say, we'll pick on Bryce True, and Bryce True is also her worst payer, if Bryce is having a party in December, which I hope he is, even in spite of this, if he's the worst payer and she's going to have a party in December for him, she can talk to him in advance and say, hey, can I get 50% down on deposits? She can change her policies as a whole or just with Bryce, right? If Bryce is unwilling to do that because he's Bryce True, I like the clicker, she can talk to her vendors. She can say, hey, I'm having a party for a customer in December, and I don't think I'm going to get paid until January, February. Would you be able to work with me in some fashion on that? But all of this is looking forward, right? If she waits until she has that party and Bryce doesn't pay her until January or February, best case scenario, this is just very stressful for her. And that's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, if the numbers get big enough or it happens long enough, she can go out of business, right? Because she's out of cash because Bryce is, he's not, actually, he's amazing. He's not.
I'm terrible.
He's probably the best payer.
The slowest payer in the world.
The other thing, a couple other considerations just with cash flow management, again, it's looking forward, is if she has a cash flow projections and she can't talk to her vendors, she's unable to talk to Bryce, but she still wants that income at the party, she can maybe talk to a commercial lender. I won't blind them with the eyes, but they're all back there if you want to talk to a commercial lender. But she has the ability to more easily demonstrate repayment if she has cash flow projections and she's looking forward instead of waiting up until Bryce doesn't pay her in January, right? And if she does planning, then she's going to be able to avoid those unexpected shortfalls. I probably could have got rid of this because I've already talked about planning. But all of this is just try and stay in business, right? So she can have cash flow management so she can stay in business and continue to be a profitable business and go forward. So I'm going to pass it back to Bryce because that's a lot of talking for one person without a lot of questions. But one more time, I'm going to say, do you guys have any questions? Okay. I didn't think so. Oh, Philip, dang it. What's up?
So when you're talking about net equity and valuing your book, the book value, how do you incorporate, if let's say you're a contractor and you've got a bunch of work on the books and you're selling your company, how do you incorporate that into that number?
It's sort of like work that you have in
So
advance.
let's say you got $1 million of work on the books this year. Does that, you know what I mean? So how does that go with the company when you sell it?
I mean, that would be an asset, but you're going to value that. I mean, go for it. You have I don't have a great answer for that. Do you?
Part of that really depends on the industry and the normal attrition that happens in an acquisition. So again, we talked about it a little bit. We're not valuation experts. Kind of been involved with them over the years, but we're not the experts, okay? So in that capacity, you really, really want to get with an industry expert in your area, right? Because insurance, for example, values it differently. There are varying degrees of guarantees that you might have on recurring business. Now, in a contractor situation, you're bidding on a single job. That job might not be a guarantee because you have bonding issues and you have construction timeframes and you might have public notice that needs to go out. So depending on the industry will really depend on how you can actually value that moving forward. In some industries, it might be a guarantee. You might have a 60% normal attrition. In other industries, it might not be a guarantee at all because the company's bonding is in question. So I can't give you a blanket answer other than that's when you want to involve as many people as you can who that is their life, right? Like we spend a lot of time diving into numbers. We're happy to talk about them. We talk about them all the time. I talk about them in my sleep until my wife hits me with a pillow. And so involve the people that know. Involve valuation expert, involve your CPA, your tax accountant, involve your banker. Get your team around you to say, okay, this is my plan. In the next 18 months, picking on you just because I know you, I want to exit insurance. I want to do something different. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get that team around you and say, okay, how can I best do this? Well, in the short term, that might be paying off any commercial real estate that you might have just to increase that cash payment that you're going to get because right now it's an expense. It might not be that. I don't know. I'm not advising anybody to do that. But you want to really analyze every aspect of that that's unique to your situation. So leading in, did that help? Okay. It's actually a great segue leading into the next aspect of it in that at Hilltop, like, we're here to help. We want to be involved. We want to be involved on the conversations. Thanks, Greg. To help you actually evaluate what makes the most sense to you. Where do you want to take this? And we spent a lot of time picking on Amy and really reviewing it. And we'll get a little bit more into that in the next few minutes. But the most important aspect is that she has a team of people that she can talk to that really help her analyze every aspect. Having a great accountant, having a great relationship with your banker, having a lawyer that you can call is time and money well spent on your business because they're going to help you navigate those times where you don't necessarily have the information in hand to make the best decision. So the more that you can include a handful of key individuals around you in those moments, the better off you are. At Hilltop, that's exactly what we try to be. That's what we strive to be on a day-to-day basis. Our goal, especially in client services, but across the departments, is to be the single source solution for everything that you've got going on. Whether it be a simple new account or whether it be trying to review your merchant services, whether it be online banking, whether it just be understanding how you can run and operate better and leaner. We're here to help you talk about it and explore those options. What we did is we actually sat down with Amy and said, okay, Amy, what makes sense in your world? These are a lot of the options that we talked about. We talked about merchant services. We talked about ACH. We talked about direct deposit and mobile deposit capture, merchant source capture, which is a little scanner that you sit on the desk and run your checks around. And a lot of these, we're not gonna dive into every single one of these today because it doesn't make sense for Amy, and that's the point. Not every option that the bank has, which is a plethora, fits in every situation. So we're gonna take it on a piece-by-piece basis and say, what makes sense to you? For Amy, what we did is we went and looked at merchant services because in liquor sales, cards are used 90% of the time, right? They're not super check intensive. There's a lot of cash, but a lot of it is done by card. So to touch back in on the numbers, these were the initial numbers, okay? The ones that we really wanted to focus in on were the other expenses because that's where some of the variable costs occur. That's where the merchant service fees are. That's where some of the other expenses are. And that's where we can really help say, okay, what makes sense in your environment? We're not going to try to help on the sales aspect because that's a business decision. The other expenses we can help with. So drilling into them pretty close, we got a pretty good assessment on what actually happened in July. Anybody in here ever have a printer just stop working, or you office space it and you take a wrench to it and all of a sudden you realize you have to buy a new one? That's what happened to Amy. She had to spend $400 on a new printer, right? That drove down her profit margin. But the other aspect that she was faced with is she was paying a lot in merchant service fees. So when we were talking to her, we're like, okay, Amy, what are you doing on these cards? Like, why are your fees seemingly higher than industry average? And what we found with Amy is that she was doing a lot of phone orders. So because she works with me, I'd call ahead, I'd place an order, and then I'd swing by on the way home, and she was doing it as a customer service. But she was hand keying my card information every single time I do that. Now the bottle of wine made it home safe and sound, and my wife would always love it, but it was costing her money, and she didn't realize that. So in our processes and sitting down with Amy, we found that by eliminating phone orders from her process, because they weren't necessary, I was still picking it up, we were able to drive additional savings. Additionally, we repriced her merchant services. And when we were able to do that with the company that we work with, we were able to save her significantly on the fee structure itself. Now, when you break it down, the savings was over $100 every single month, which on average increased her profitability by 50 basis points. That is a tremendous add to her business because that's padding her bottom dollar. That's money back to Amy that's going to help her reach her goals of higher profitability and higher net equity. This was a very, very simple process that we went through. Took a couple days, got all the applications done, and she's off and running in a simple and smooth manner that's driving more money into her pocket. The other aspect that we talked to Amy about was ACH. For those that don't know what it is, it's a number of different things. It's got a ton of different acronyms, but effectively it's payroll direct deposit, it's vendor remittance, it's tax payment done electronically. So we took a look at how many times she was writing a check to see if we could eliminate some of that check processing that she was sending out in the mail and hoping and praying that USPS was going to deliver on, okay? When it's done and scaled for your business, it can truly help with your cash management. It can really increase, or it can decrease the days that you have out on accounts receivable. So for Amy, I now have a tab that I run and she debits my account every single month, right? Because she knows that I'm a slow pay. It can also help her control her accounts payable. What that means is instead of sending a check in the mail, she can say, on this day, I want my vendor to get this much money, and she's in control of that. That is an incredible way to increase your efficiencies and manage your cash flows. So what we did with Amy is, again, we sat down and said, okay, we have another low-hanging fruit item here. You had 2 huge events in July and August, and they cost you money on merchant services. They're contract items, right? They're a wedding. When I got married, I had to sign like 17 pages worth of agreements between the vendor, the venue, the caterer, the liquor provider. I mean, there was way more contracts than I probably should have. I think I only paid attention to one. It's still holding true today, which I'm grateful for. But we said, okay, where can we actually save you some more money? So Amy, because she only has 2 part-time employees, a new full-time employee, and she's paying herself, she was paying a lot in payroll processing through QuickBooks because she was on a different contract. She was able to bring that in-house and pay less for her payroll processing. But in addition to that, and the bigger saver was right here. On those 2 weddings, she was able to utilize ACH on that contract to pull money from those weddings and deposit into her account on the pre-contracted date. It was worked into the flow, and that saved her net money of $270. Again, that's dollars into her pocket. What this combined savings does is it, again, drives up her overall profitability. So when you look at the impact, this slide is super, super busy, but the big changes are right here. Her profitability in July was 2.2%, right here. She's now up over 4% on her profitability. She's making $1,400 where compared she was only making $11. This is dollars directly back into her pocket that only took 3 days to establish. That is increased profitability that fit for Amy. But in those conversations, we explored a ton of different options. Some of the other options we looked at was merchant source capture or desktop deposit, mobile deposit capture. What we found with Amy is that this service didn't work for her. She didn't accept a lot of checks. She had a bad experience 5 years ago, so she stopped. She doesn't need the product, we're not going to get it to her. That's one of the things that we really try to focus on at Hilltop is right-sizing the situation for your business. We want to talk about it here because as the weather indicates outside, it's getting colder. It's time spent driving to the bank to make a simple check deposit is not necessary anymore. There are ways that we can help you increase your efficiencies, keep your employees safe, and eliminate your drive time by deploying a few little technologies that we've had now for a number of years. We just wanted you to know about them. Additionally, Amy's in conversation with our commercial lending department. She's trying to figure out how to manage her cash flows to make sure that she weathers the storm during her slower months and can pay it back during her heavier months. She's sitting down with them to help build out those cash flows and actually understand them better so she knows her operating cycle in addition to her operating cash flow. There are a lot of options here, and I'm not a lender, so I'm not going to dive into a lot of them, but we have the expertise here to go over those metrics. Earlier, Bryant referenced the target goal of 15 to 20% of margin. Our lenders have the ability to pull that information for you and say what is common in your industry. Liquor sales might be 15 to 20%. Manufacturing, it might be down to 3 or 4%. Again, I don't know, full disclaimer, but we can help you analyze what makes sense in your world and help you attain the best or most optimized version of your business. When it comes down to the brass and tacks of the situation, banking shouldn't be your focus. It's ours. Let it be our focus. Let us help you focus on yours, which is your business. Let us know how we can help. Any questions? Y'all took it way too easy on us. What's up, Brandon?
Have you guys solved the mobile deposit limit, daily limit on how much you can deposit on a mobile deposit?
Yes. So I say that because mobile deposit limits are on a case-by-case basis. Love to sit down and really analyze what's going on to make sure that we're getting it correctly. What other questions do you have? How else can we help? What do you want to know? What do you want us to go over again? I mean, by my clock, we're giving you back almost half an hour. So I think most people would like having a half an hour back. But if you want to eat up our time, I think we're going to be here for the next half an hour. So please don't hesitate. Let us know.
Because I'm not familiar, can you kind of explain your mobile deposits for businesses, especially when you have cash and checks, and how that would be sort of equivalent for checks? And can you explain that a little bit better, how it works?
You got it. I'd be happy to. So,
Bryce, could you repeat the question, please?
great, thank you. The question was define mobile deposit capture versus merchant source capture in a better fashion when you have multiple variables, the variables being checks and cash. So, again, it really depends on your business. If you're very, very cash intensive, that depends on how much you want to secure up in that day. If you get cash 1 to 2 times a week, that changes the equation. So, on a blanket statement, again, it's case by case. But effectively, if you have low volume and you're processing 1 to 5 checks a week, mobile deposit capture might be a great fit. Okay? What you do is you reach out to Brian or myself or Justin and back, our client services team up at the main office, or your personal banker, and we can review that and see what makes sense. If you're processing just a handful of checks, very, very easy to sign up. Now, with that said, if you're processing 50 checks in a day, or if you're processing 100 checks in a month, or the volumes start to tick up, you might not want to spend time taking a picture of each individual check, signing the back, taking a picture of the check. The process on volume can be very tedious. Now, if you have 1 to 5 checks a week, it's not as pressing of a matter. You can still make a mobile deposit happen very, very efficiently just from your smartphone through online banking. If you have that volume, you're going to run a scanner, and that scanner just connects to your online banking. You log into the online banking portal, you click a couple buttons. You scan your checks, and they're received at the bank. We process merchant source capture items every hour on the hour from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. So you're expediting the time you're shortening the time it takes for the checks to reach the bank, which is expediting the time that you have funds in your account. Does that help answer that? So again, it really depends. If you're very cash intensive, it might be a combination. We might have a night drop option that would serve really well to where as you're leaving the bank or as you're leaving your office, you do the cash deposit in our night deposit, which is a secured location and it has a key, and you're processing the checks throughout the course of the day whenever they come in. So it really just depends on what your business setting is and what you feel most comfortable in terms of securing your information. What other questions do you have? Yeah, go crush your enemies. I think the only other thing we have to do is make sure that Brian pays up his $5. He's right here. I'm not going to let you off the hook. As a quick reminder, there are the anonymous surveys. Please let us know how we did. Always welcome criticism. Want to make sure we're doing better every single time. Additionally, if you have requests for more information, or if you want to go over a different product, or if something's not working quite right, please let us know. We want to reach out. We want to make sure that we're taking care of our customers. So let us know what we can do.
I would just say their contact info is in your deck. Email, direct phone lines, and please reach out to them. Any questions, you may not have them now, but maybe later, so utilize those.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bryce, I have a real quick question for you or Brian. I am such a good manager of my business that I have abundant cash. What do I do?
Call us. We'd be happy to take that off your hands for you. No, we have a number of, and that's a great question. You know, in today's market where you have rising and falling interest rates, the cycle has been incredibly short. When we first started looking at a number of products about a year and a half ago, we thought interest rates were just going to keep on rising and get back up to a very comfortable level. As we found out this year, that was not the case. They've been decreasing, but you still want to deploy that cash in the most useful way, right? So in Client Treasury Services, we take a pretty holistic view on what makes the most sense. Depending on the dollar amount, that might be a referral to our trust department. You might want to sit down with them and truly build a wealth generation plan that helps you in your succession planning. If you're wanting to maintain liquidity, it might be a sweep product that helps you maintain that liquidity, but still get you a little bit more earnings. If you have high transactions in your analysis or in your checking account, it might be a combination. We might review your analysis account and tag it to a sweep so you have lower bank fees and higher interest earnings to make sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck. That's what Client Treasury Services does on a day-in-day basis, is we are here to try to help you save on bank fees, make more interest, and build your business. Bob, did you have a question?
No, I did not.
Great, thank you.